Hello everybody, welcome back to another Conversations with Projektor. Today we start with the topic, my stream delay is annoying. Before I go, you can contribute topics for this series on my Discord server.
Can you add modulation on this sound that you're working on?
Unfortunately, I don't know which sounds that you mean. It's hard to do this with the streaming. It's not the way that you asked. I think I also skipped over your question a little bit, but even then there's like a minute or two delay between when you send the message and when I see it. So when you say this sound, I don't necessarily know what sound that you're talking about. You can always, by the way, go back into the stream and see over here the name of any of the sounds. If you really want me to identify a specific sound, then just tell me like that. Because usually with descriptions of sounds and even stuff like that, it's really hard. There's also track numbers here. I think these track numbers might be a little bit hard for you guys to see on YouTube here. This one as well, because the text color is red on like a different red, right? Whereas this is black on color. So this should be easier to see with like the streaming quality and whatever.
Why separate the mixing and production stage?
Maybe add another sound to this sound with the same notes. I'm no longer producing, I am mixing. So I'm not adding new stuff to the track. I'm not making new sounds. I'm not adding modulations. I'm not changing the story of the track. I'm not changing the ideas of the track. I'm just making sure that the ideas fit together. That's the goal here. I'm not writing music anymore, so I won't do that. No. Just to answer your question. The goal of the whole idea behind me exporting all of the individual tracks to audio and having them in a new project, which is not Ableton, is that I can work on the track in a technical, analytical way without thinking about the production anymore. I cannot go back and, for example, change the melody of this sound over here. This is the melody. This is the sound that I have to work with, and I just have to deal with the fact that this is the sound and it's not going to be different, right? I just have to work this into the track. I've spent maybe like 90 hours working on this production. At some point you just have to say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to leave all of the production behind and I'm going to make sure that I can get to a final track. If I don't do that, if I now start to add another sounds to it, add another layers, add modulations and stuff like that, it's going to take me another 20, 30 hours to get this track actually finished, and I'll never get any work done in that way.
My feedback streams.
Where could I submit my demo? You can submit demos in my Discord server. Yeah, there's already people submitting their demo for next Sunday. So there's already 2 people submitting over here. You do need to make sure that you read the rules before posting. There are some rules to this kind of stuff. But next Sunday at 5 o'clock, just at the same time that I started my stream today, we will go through all of the different tracks that have been submitted.
Highpass all elements individually versus on buses.
Do you EQ every channel individually, or do you just run them through a bus that has a high-pass EQ? Well, running all of your tracks through a high-pass EQ is a very bad idea, because there's negative consequences that high-pass EQs tend to have in terms of phase shift. So for example, the kick and the bass, you don't want to high-pass those. That is a really bad idea, because the phase shift muddies out the transients of both the kick and the bass notes. If you actually high-pass that, the phase shift will make the sub-bass go later in time a little bit. And that means that the sub-bass of the bass line essentially plays on top of the transient of the kick drum. So you don't really want that, which means that yes, I do EQ all of my tracks individually, which you can also see down below here. There's many different tracks with different EQs, and when it comes to the buses, there's a little bit of processing. Here there's like a slight sidechaining to the kick drum, and here there's a slight bit of saturation, which we might also add to some other buses as well, and then that same kind of LFO tool. But most of the buses, you'll see most of the like main groups in here aren't really doing anything. I might have like a kick group that is doing, in this case, some high-end stuff. So here I'm not really worried about the phase shift that we're getting from that. Here I'm combining all of the top loops. In this case, I might high pass on here if necessary. But even here, I am already EQing all of the individual elements, so I might as well do it there.
Plugin recommendations, while thoughtful, are often not what I need.
You should try this free volume shaper called STF View. It kills the LFO tool.
I don't think I will. As I mentioned before, when it comes to plugins, there's no reason to install new plugins unless they have additional benefit that you immediately gain from it, because otherwise you'll never end up using them. To me, I'm happy with LFO I don't need something that is better than LFO because what LFO provides for me is exactly what I wanted to have. And I've built up the muscle memory with LFO I know all of the controls. I know exactly how it works. So for me, switching right now would just hamper my workflow.
LFO tool used to crash my projects in Reaper, so I had to replace it with something else.
It works fine for me. I don't know, maybe you should update to the latest version or something like that. It seems to work fine for me. I've never had any issues with any crashes.
I'm not asking you to switch. You can have both.
Again, there's no benefit in having an additional plugin in your list if it's not going to do anything. Like I said before, I have so many plugins already in here. Like, what is the benefit of adding one more if the functionality that I need from that plugin already exists in a different plugin that I'm already perfectly fine using, and that I already know, and I already know how it works. I don't have to learn anything. I don't have to spend time discovering how the plugin actually works. I can just use it. When I bypass it, it crashes. Again, I have no idea. I never have that issue. I can bypass whenever I want it, and nothing happens for me. This is, I don't even know if it's the latest version, but it is a version. I should be able to see here, right? The version. Yeah, version 1.768. So if you're not on that version, then maybe see if you can download the latest version. There isn't an update available. I know that Serum has the automatic updates thing, or at least it detects updates. But yeah, then just log into your Xfer account or wherever you get LFO from and just update it. And it should work. Maybe it even has to do with the particular version of Reaper that you have as well. I don't know. Just make sure that your stuff is up to date and that there's, yeah, no issues in that regard. Or just in general, maybe try reinstalling. Maybe that fixes the problem. Well, the other VST I use now, I love it so much that I can't go back. Yeah, in that case, you can just use the other VST as well. Usually for me, that is not really a solution. As I said before, I don't like to needlessly hoard plugins anymore. As you can see, I used to be that person, right? With the amount of plugins that I still have installed. I could go 10 years going through all of these plugins and not understand exactly what every plugin does that I have over here. And that's okay. At the end of the day, sometimes you're going to have something, or you're buying a package and maybe some of the plugins you never use. Like I use Melda Productions. It's like 120 plugins. I'm never going to use all 120 of them, but I just like having the package. And there's definitely a benefit in having the package there. It doesn't mean that I have to use every single one of them, but to needlessly add to this list is just complicating your life more than it needs to be. There's not really a reason to just add to the list if you're not going to use the plugin, and the only way that you're going to use the plugin if it's solving a problem that you're actively having. If it doesn't do that, then you can have as many plugins installed as you want, but there's never really a reason for you to open up the plugin and explore what it does and how it works, and really dive deep into the plugin, deep enough to actually learn how it works.
Ear fatigue.
But yeah, I'll take a quick break, like 10 minutes, just to make sure that I'm freshened up and that I don't get ear fatigue, essentially. That's the reason why I'm doing it now. Usually, like taking a break on stream is something that I do always, but with the mixing, it has some actual importance to it because I'm making such detailed decisions, right? You don't want to fall into the habit of getting ear fatigue and essentially starting to like the track that you're working on. You always want to be able to be critical about the music that you're listening to, which you can only do by taking regular breaks from it, not like constantly listening to it and listening to it over and over and over again. Although that is the kind of thing that you need to do to hear the details, at some point you're going to have issues with that. The more that you listen to it, the more that you're just kind of like automatically starting to like the track. You don't hear the flaws in it anymore. So at this point, I just need to take a break so that I can freshen up again. Yeah, you need a break in order to continue working. Exactly.
The iterative mixing approach.
It's actually funny that there's an old volume over here that is going down and then we're correcting it with the other volume over here. I guess that's the iterative mixing approach, right? That you end up with multiple parameters kind of working against each other. I like to keep it like that. I can kind of see what my thinking process was throughout the whole mixing phase. I tend to work that way in the production as well, in that whenever I have already an EQ somewhere, I tend to prefer adding another EQ on top, for example. So there's many tracks where you'll see that there's a lot of EQs on top of each other. Let's see if I can find a good example of that happening. Yeah, so for example here, we have spectral dynamics, M equalizer doing some stuff, and then reverb, and then another equalizer doing some other stuff, right? I could have easily done that in one equalizer, but I just like having two equalizers here because it shows me like, okay, this happened first, then I decided to add the reverb, and then I decided to EQ it once more. It kind of keeps track for you of the history of your project, so to say.
This nasty plugin behavior ruins tests.
Bass kick, we've done that. I want a little bit more oomph coming from the kick. So we'll try to do that. We already have our thoughtfull tool set up for that. So what we could do is, it should be in here, right? Yes. One of these. Let's see if this gives me what I want. I love that this plugin automatically adds 3 dB of gain to the output. That's very useful. That's an annoying marketing thing that some plugin manufacturers do and that you need to look out for a lot when it comes to these kind of plugins. I've noticed the same thing happening. I guess not exactly the same thing is happening with the Waves SSL compressor. As much as I like this compressor here, what I don't like about it is that it opens up with 3 dB of boost by default. It makes no sense for it to do that, because what will happen is you'll add the plugin and you'll say, oh, this plugin is doing so much, it's making the sound so much better, but all that you're actually hearing is just the volume going up by 3 dB. Like specifically, if there's no compression happening, then the plugin isn't doing anything, it's just making it louder, and louder equals better. But that's not how you're mixing, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to balance different things. So having the balance that you already established with the volumes ruined by a plugin that you're inserting is just very annoying, and I wish that plugin developers would not do that. iKey Multimedia uses a lot of different annoying marketing techniques, so it's definitely one of the things that I see them just doing purely for the marketing. Maybe the SSL compressor, the way that it opens up by default, it should already be applying some compression by default. So maybe in that case it makes sense to already have some makeup gain. But for iKey Multimedia, I've noticed that every plugin that I open up, I just automatically have to remove like 3 dB of gain from it to gain stage it. And especially with elements as important as the kick, you really don't want to have to gain stage again and again and again, because it's just going to take extra time that you don't need, because I already know exactly what the volume of the kick needs to be. I don't need to have a plugin kind of reevaluate the volume for me. In this case, we should be here-ish. Yeah, now with proper balancing, we can actually hear what the plugin is actually doing. But if I go to a default setting, you can see it just adds a dB of gain over here, even a little bit more. So that's just annoying. It shouldn't do that. There shouldn't be a reason for the gain structure to change throughout the plugin. Even if that's like modeled behavior, there should be an option to immediately be able to turn off that behavior so that at least the gain structure by default is just equal throughout the plugin. Way too many plugins do this. Yes, exactly. There's a lot of plugins that, or a lot of companies that automatically do that in their plugin. There is indeed a few good reasons for it. Like for this EQ, I'm 100% willing to buy that the hardware unit also does that. But even in that case, I would say then there should just be an easy way to maybe have a button over here that is just like compensation, and it just automatically compensates so that by default, if you're applying no processing whatsoever, the input level and the output level are equal. That doesn't get changed in any way.
Alright, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did by leaving a like, and if you're new here, make sure that you're subscribed. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.